Hello everybody, welcome to the Laughing Skull podcast. This is episode 1. Today we're going to be talking about the incredible case of Travis Walton, aka the most famous UFO abductee story of all time. This man is quite the legend in the UFO community. I find his story incredibly fascinating, so I figured I wanted to start the podcast off talking, well, about Travis himself. The Travis Walton UFO incident was an alleged alien abduction of American forestry worker Travis Walton by a UFO on November 5th, 1975. While he was working in the Apache Cedar National Forest near Snowflake, Arizona. Walton was missing for 5 days and 6 hours. After days of searching with scent dogs and helicopters, Walton says he reappeared by the side of the road near Heber, Arizona. The Walton case received mainstream publicity and remains one of the best-known alien abduction stories, while scientific skeptics consider it a hoax. Walton wrote a book about his abduction in 1978 called The Walton Experience. Later changed it to The Fire in the Sky, The Walton Experience, for the 1993 film release of the Fire in the Sky movie. The abduction claims, according to Walton himself, on November 5th, 1975, he was working with the timber stand improvement crew in the Apache National Forest near Snowflake, Arizona. While riding in a truck with 6 of his co-workers, they encountered a saucer-shaped object hovering over the ground approximately 110 feet away, making a high-pitched buzz. Walton claimed that after he left the truck and approached the object, a beam of light suddenly appeared from the craft and knocked him unconscious. The other 6 men were frightened and supposedly drove away. Walton claimed that he woke in a hospital-like room being observed by 3 short, bald creatures. He claimed that he fought with them until a human wearing a helmet led Walton to another room, where he blacked out as 3 other humans put a clear plastic mask over his face. Walton has claimed he remembers nothing else until he was found walking along a highway 5 days later, and the flying saucer departing above him. So it's a very interesting story because he actually does have eyewitnesses testing to this entire story, you know? This is a picture of Walton. So it's like the 6 coworkers he had working with him, one of them actually did not like him. He was more of like the drifter that kind of just was crewed up with them. So he wasn't really a friend. But here's the thing. Whenever he went missing, the police actually thought that all 6 of them had murdered him and hid the body. So they went on polygraph testing, and it turns out none of them actually failed the test. They all passed, including every question in regards to him being abducted. It's just baffling that this man, you know, he just dipped out of reality. It's really interesting, like, because, you know, the police really thought that he was murdered, so they were questioning these 6 men, whose names I cannot remember off the top of my head, so I apologize. But the police were going after them, thinking that they really just got away with murder. So that's why they spent the next couple days hunting this man down, and they couldn't find him. Which is even more funny because in Walton's experience, I'll just say Travis from this point on. But in Travis's experience being abducted, when he was on the UFO, he awoken to these small alien grays, which is, you know, the common way that we like to, you know, talk about how we identify these creatures. And they were, I think, about 3 to 4 feet tall, if I remember correctly. And he kind of attacked them, and they were kind of stunned that he was doing that. So when Travis attacked them, he said that he hit one, and it kind of fell over extremely easy, and it kind of surprised him because he didn't really expect it to be that easy to knock down. But the one scary thing about them is that he said that their faces were not changing. They had no change of emotion in their face, as if they were just stoic the entire time. But he freaked out enough where they actually left down the hall, and he decided to go the opposite direction through the hallway until he met up with a man in a blue jumpsuit with a glass dome over his head. Kind of like, I guess, one of those old-fashioned astronauts from those old movies. And the guy looked pretty humanoid, but from what Travis himself said, the guy had these slightly larger than normal human eyes that glowed gold. The man did not speak to Travis, but he did lead him down into another room with other humans in there. All of them had the same face expression. They all had giant eyes, and they all had the golden irises. No one spoke to Travis, but he felt more at ease whenever he was around them because they were all, well, pretty similar to him. It's a big conspiracy of whether or not that they're actually human beings working with aliens, or just aliens took a shape of something that he'd be more comfortable with while they helped him. So whenever he got hit with the tractor beam, it supposedly damaged Travis Walton, and that's why they abducted him, because it wasn't supposed to happen. So whenever he got out of the truck, his friends told him not to go, but he got out, and apparently the UFO was 110 feet away from him. So he walks over to the UFO, gets underneath it, and he starts hearing this high-pitched whine, right? And it was silent up until that point when he got underneath it. But once he got underneath it, that's when the tractor beam shot him. And I guess he wasn't supposed to be there, so they decided to help him. From what, if you really understand the story, that's kind of how it comes across. They were just operating on him basically to repair his damaged body. But the way he got hit, he should have technically died, the way he describes it. Because they described it as like a blue beam hit him. Another one of his friends said it looked like a lightning bolt struck him. And all I can think about is like Goku doing the Kamehameha. But yeah, it's got to be a scary thought to just wake up on like an operation table being surrounded by things from another world, you know? The story is a very fascinating story in comparison to other UFO stories. Primarily, the most famous one, apart from this one, was the Barney and Betty Hill case, which I don't know if I'm actually going to cover that one, but that one was a pretty wild one. It was like the first recorded UFO abduction story of all time, I believe. I might be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But after being missing for so many days, like, you know, the police went to his family and were asking them, like, hey, have you seen Travis? You know, your son's apparently been abducted. And, you know, his mom, being as just weird as she can be, just goes, yeah, you know, these things happen. Which is kind of a red flag, you know, like, maybe the story is a little bullshit. But his brother also was telling a story of how he got chased by a UFO just a couple weeks prior. You know, it's just, when you hear things like that, it kind of makes you wonder, like, can you really trust this story or not? But here's the thing, his story is probably the most accurate, I shouldn't even use that word, it's the most interesting UFO abduction story, because it feels like it's probably truth. You know, again, this happened in 1975, so it's been almost 50 years, right? We're getting to that point where it's almost been 50 years. So he's kept, you know, the same story. He's been very consistent for almost half a century, and the story hasn't really changed much. And I say much because whenever he went on TV talking about it, he left out a lot of details. But it's understandable, because like when you're on TV, you have like a certain amount of time you can really talk. So, you know, I'm gonna kind of let that one slide. You know, he's also been on a game show, and I want to talk about that real quick. He was on a game show one time. So this is a show called Truth About, I believe, or The Moment of Truth. This is The Moment of Truth.
What happened on November 5th, 1975? Well, Travis Walton has told us a detailed account. You can read his book. What is the title of the book?
Fire in the Sky.
Fire in the Sky. also a movie based on his story, and basically he says he was driving with 6 crew members from a day of work where they saw a flying saucer, and he jumped out of the truck, and the next thing was witnessed by Ken and others that a beam of energy or light hit you, and you believe that you were abducted, and Ken believes that you were abducted by aliens for that period of time. So we asked that question. Question 15 is simply this. Were you abducted by a UFO on November 5th, 1975?
Yes.
That answer is false.
Well, Travis, I told you at the very beginning of this show that I'm not a skeptic. And so I try not to judge or root one way or the other, but I was really hoping that this answer was a true answer. All I will say to you is that when asked this while strapped to the polygraph machine, it was deduced that your response was conclusively deceptive. Sadly, I'll say that the $100,000 you stood to win by answering truthfully is not yours, but I will happily say that by having the courage to face us and be here and answer these questions, 14 of which you answered truthfully, we have $25,000 for you. Is there anything, Travis, you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
Well, the polygraph is 97% accurate, not 100.
So as you can see from the clip, he looked pretty distraught. Like he wasn't really happy with the result. But here's the thing, he's actually taken the polygraph test before and it came back positive. So another thing you have to take into consideration when it comes to TV shows, game shows, etc., etc. Like, for one, you can't really say yes, aliens exist, abduction story is accurate. It's not a really popular thing with the scientific community. On top of that, a lot of these shows, they do actually manipulate test results, as in case with the Jerry Springer show and the Maury show. This is a known thing. They do that for shock value to get better ratings. Whenever it comes to cases like You Are the Father or whatever, they actually do manipulate the results, and then they normally let you know after the show. Another case is he was going to go for some money, so a lot of game shows don't really want you to get that top prize. It's also not like they can, like a TV show like that can really just, say, hey, this is what happened, this is actually true. Aliens do exist, by the way. Watch your show for ratings. They're not going to go with that route. But yeah, I actually really do believe his story. I honestly do. I've looked into a lot of UFO abduction cases over the years. Like, it used to be something I was really passionate about when I was a teenager, because I used to read about all this crazy UFO stories, the cryptozoology, animals, monsters, myths, urban legends, creepypastas. All of this shit has been really fascinating to me. And I've read a lot about people being abducted, and his is probably one of the few that actually really makes me want to believe it's true. His body was examined after he came back home, and he did have, I guess, like a puncture wound on his elbow. We're not really sure where it came from. It has been theorized that it was from drug abuse, but you never know. It could have been operated on his elbow. It's very interesting. In the days following Travis's UFO claim, the National Enquirer awarded Walton, I keep saying Walter, and his co-workers a $5,000 prize for the best UFO case of the year. After they passed, they did pass it, but after they passed polygraph test administered by the Enquirer and the Aerial Phenomenal Research Organization, or APRO, Travis, his older brother, and his mother were described by the Navajo County, Arizona Sheriff as longtime students of the UFOs. Some ufologists, I can't believe this is really a profession, believe Travis was abducted by aliens. UFO scientist Jim Ledwith said for 5 years the authorities thought he'd been murdered by, or for 5 days they thought he was been murdered by his coworkers, and then he returned. All of the coworkers who were there, who saw the spacecraft, they all took the polygraph test and they all passed, except for one. That one came up inconclusive. Now the one that came up inconclusive was actually the drifter I was talking about earlier. He wasn't really a friend. He didn't really care about Travis. And he was more of like one of those kind of guys that just wanted to be left alone. He didn't want to be involved with anything. So he was probably just answered like, yeah, sure, whatever. Of course, without doubt, there's always going to be skeptical reception when it comes to these kinds of stories. Skeptics considered the case to be a hoax, describing it as a sensationally on the part of the media and a put-up job to make money. UFO researcher Philip J. Klaus considered Travis's story to be a hoax for financial gain and discovered many discrepancies in the accounts of Walton and his coworkers. After investigating the case, Klaus reported that the polygraph tests were poorly administered, that Travis used polygraph countermeasures, such as holding his breath, and that Klaus uncovered an earlier failed test administered by an examiner who concluded the case involved gross deception. Very interesting, because, in my opinion, whenever you could tell the truth 100 times, and if you get one lie out, someone finds out you lied one time, it's just everything you said up to that point has been discredited. It's very interesting. Maybe I'm being a little biased here. I don't really know. I'd like to know what you think about the subject, obviously. Science and Skepticism writer Michael Shermer criticized Travis's claim, saying, "I think the polygraph is a not reliable demeanor of truth. I think Travis was not abducted by aliens. In both cases, the power of deception and self-description is all we need to understand what really happened in 1975 and after." Psychologist Susan Clancy argues that alien abduction reports being only after stories of extraterrestrials appear on films and on TV, and that Walton was likely influenced by the NBC television movie The UFO Incident, which aired only 2 weeks before his own claimed abduction, and dramatized the alien abduction claims of Barney and Betty Hill. Clancy noted that the rise in alien abduction claims following the movie and cites Klaus's conclusions that after viewing this movie or any movie, any person with a little imagination could now become an instant celebrity, concluding that one of these instant celebrities was, in fact, Travis Walton. Very, very interesting. As I said earlier, it's not a grounded scientific fact that aliens even exist. It is definitely a theory. So I can understand why people are always trying to discredit this man. Maybe, as I said, maybe I'm just a little biased and I really want to believe this case, because I actually really have no doubts that this happened. I mean, he had freaking eyewitnesses, man. I know that could easily be, lied to or whatever, but they all passed the polygraph test. Very interesting, In 1978, Walton wrote the book The Walton Experience, detailing his claims, which became the basis for the 1993 film Fire in the Sky. Paramount Pictures decided Walton's account was too fuzzy and too similar to be televised Close Encounters, so they ordered screenwriter Tracy Torme, I hope I pronounced that correctly, to write a flashier, more provocative abduction story. Walton has occasionally appeared at UFO conventions or on television. He sponsors his own UFO convention conference in Arizona called the Sky Fire Summit. Now that I actually did not know. That's very interesting. On the opening day of Fire in the Sky, Walton appeared on the Larry King Live alongside Mike Rogers. The segment aired live on March 12th, 1993, featuring Philip J. Klaus. 30 years after the book's release, Walton appeared on the Fox game show The Moment of Truth, which is the clip I just showed you guys. So when it came to the 1993 movie, they did change a lot of stuff. They had to make it more Hollywood. And if you've ever seen this movie, I gotta say, definitely one of the most horrifying fucking movies ever, especially for the time period that it came out with. If you're not very, open-minded to this kind of thing, it might just be another film for you, I guess. But if you're terrified of UFOs, extraterrestrials, aliens, Martians, whatever you want to call them, this movie is going to fuck you up, man. I will definitely be showing a clip of that in just a moment, but I just want to just gather it all and put this on a scale of 1 to 10 of whether or not I believe how true the story is. And I want to give it a 9 out of 10 on my idea of it being true. And I'm going to say 9 out of 10 because he has changed the story just a little bit. Now, to be fair, a lot of it had to do with the fact that he had repressed memories that were only triggered by having to go under hypnosis. And he did go under hypnosis, I believe, the same day he was found, or I think it was like 2 weeks. It was somewhere in between, but he underwent hypnosis, and he was able to reprocess a lot of old memories that were lost. So that came to be where a lot of like his story came from. It's just a very scary thought, if you've ever had anything to learn about this, just it's not something you really want to experience, like nobody wants to be abducted. But I'm going to go ahead and leave this with the ending of Fire in the Sky. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this movie, this would be the time to end the podcast. So thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed episode 1 of the Laughing Skull podcast. And stay safe, my friends.
Oh,